Okay, third part. My phone rang and the video stopped. So, all right, picking back up where we were on private corporations. Private corporation this is, again, what you're going to be, there we go. This is what you're going to be forming in the event that you decide you want to set up a company. Assuming that you're like any other company set up around in this area. So a private corporation is a corporation formed, and then I have a typo, formed by and owned by individuals and other private interests, meaning other companies. Private corporation is formed and owned by individuals. Okay, so this is not something that the public can just go buy shares in and become an owner in your company. This is one that individuals own. You, your family, your business partner, whoever. So point a close corporation, C-L-O-S-E. A close corporation is a privately held corporation with a small number of shareholders, often members of the same family. So if my parents and I, my husband and I, my siblings and I decided we wanted to set up a corporation, we're not going on the stock market, you can't buy shares in our company, we're going to be considered a close corporation. We're family members, small number of people who own the corporation. Point I under that is more of a tax thing that you should be aware of. It's an S corporation, just the letter S. Closely held corporation that is taxed like a partnership while affording its owners the limited liability of a corporation. So, in the event that your corporation is eligible to be taxed like an S corporation, and there's a lot of requirements according to CPAs that have to be met, if you have that privilege, then that means the corporation doesn't have its own taxes, but instead, just like a partnership, the profits flow on through the corporation and the individuals recognize the income or the profits on their individual tax returns. So again, that's just kind of a tax thing to know that some corporations meet the requirements to be taxed like an S corporation, and sometimes your CPA will tell you if that's beneficial or not. So that's a private corporation. That's the most common one you're going to be dealing with. Number 4, a nonprofit corporation. A nonprofit corporation is a corporation typically formed for charitable, educational, religious, or similar purposes, and organized and operated without the goal of making a profit. They are Paducah Day Nursery, Oscar Cross Boys and Girls Club, Family Service Society, all of those who aren't in the job or aren't in the business of making money. They're in the business of raising money for a certain need, okay? And so they are literally set up just like a corporation. You file the same paperwork that you do for a corporation, but you also include other language in those documents to say we're strictly for the purposes of educational, religious, whatever, and we have the intent of being a 501c3 under the Internal Revenue Code. So you go a step further with the Internal Revenue Service, with the IRS, and you get your tax-exempt classification so that people, when they make donations to you, they get the tax benefit of that as well. But you're still a corporation. You're a corporation, but you're just classified as a nonprofit, okay? What I would love for you to do is go, and I wish I was tech savvy and I could log into my computer and do this ourselves, because this is what I would do in class. I would love for you to go play on the Kentucky Secretary of State's website. Every bit of information that you want to know about corporations and LLCs that are doing business in our state, you'll find on that website. So just Google Kentucky Secretary of State. Once you get to the website, scroll down to the bottom and do the business search. Search any business that you can think of. I mean, I have a Chambers Roofing sign in my front yard right now because I have to get a new roof. And search that, and you'll see if they are set up in the state of Kentucky. So are they a domestic or a foreign corporation? Look at Oscar Cross Boys and Girls Club. You'll see them on the website. They are a corporation, but you'll see that they are a nonprofit. You'll see what state they were organized in. It's really cool. You get to see a bunch of information that's all public for various companies that are set up or doing business in Kentucky. There's one for Chick-fil-A on the Kentucky Secretary of State's website because they're all over Kentucky. So you can really see some cool information about various companies. Okay, so setting up a corporation. The incorporation procedure. Number 1, select the state of incorporation. If you come into my office and you say, I live in Paducah, I'm going to do business in Paducah, we're going to select Kentucky as the state of your incorporation. But you should note, point A, Delaware is a popular choice because of its corporate laws. I have not dug into those corporate laws, but all I know is, generally speaking, especially for your Apples, your Facebook, the big companies, Walmart, if you look, 9 times out of 10, those are going to be set up in Delaware. So they're going to be set up probably physically somewhere else, but they are going to be organized under the laws of Delaware because apparently their corporate laws are so favorable to corporations that a lot of people choose that to be their home state. After you select the state of incorporation, number 2, select an appropriate corporate name. Point A, the name must neither be the same as nor deceptively similar to that of an existing corporation in the state of incorporation. So usually what happens when somebody comes to our office and says, I want to set up an LLC or I want to set up a corporation, here's what I want to name it, we're going to do a quick name search with the Kentucky Secretary of State's office and make sure that there's not something that's too similar or that same name, so that we can get you the name that you want or come up with something a little bit different. Now, none of that, remember, that some kind of somewhat relates to our talk on trademark and copyright, all that kind of stuff, but we're not worried about that right now. So number 3, to actually set up the company, we file the Articles of Incorporation. So we prepare the Articles of Incorporation. This is your constitution. This is what sets you up. So point A, this will include the corporation's name, the number of authorized shares, and the names and addresses of its registered agent and incorporators. So going back to the LLC talk, remember, a company is a separate entity, so you have to list the registered agent's name and where they can be found so that if the company is needing to be sued and served with papers, you've told everybody through the Secretary of State's office, by way of your Articles of Incorporation, who can receive those papers on the company's behalf. Number 4, you file the Articles of Incorporation. So here in Kentucky, you file those with the Kentucky Secretary of State's office, and you file them with the county clerk. All right, the Secretary of State's the main one you need to know. That is the central agency for recording documents. Okay, and number 5, after incorporation, the first organizational meeting must be held. The first organizational meeting must be held. So this is where you basically you file your articles and then you immediately have a meeting that's validating and approving everything that's been filed with the Secretary of State's office. Point A, you will also adopt bylaws, which are the corporation's internal rules or management. Okay, rules of management. So the articles are what sets you up and sets the whole world on notice that you've got this company. The bylaws are internally how you're going to be operating. How many people are going to be on your board of directors? What officers are you going to have on the board? What are their term limits? What's liability look like? All that kind of stuff. That's your internal document. So remember with the LLC, you do your articles of organization and you have an operating agreement. Moving over to the corporation, you've got your articles of incorporation and your bylaws. Okay? It's pretty simple. I mean, it's not simple. There's a lot of steps, and they're by statute, so they have to be followed in order to properly set up your company. But once you do, then you've got your annual meetings, your board meets, and your bylaws really just tell everybody involved how decisions are going to be made and by who. Okay, piercing the corporate veil. So, generally speaking, because you have this separate entity, you're afforded this protection that your personal assets are not going to be put at risk, that your liability is limited to any investment that you have made with that company. That's the beauty of setting up a separate entity. However, there's always a but, especially when you're an attorney. Number one, a plaintiff may be able to pierce the corporate veil. Pierce the corporate veil. Think of like a wedding veil. When the courts disregard the corporate entity and sue the wrongdoers individually for actions they took as owners, officers, directors. So essentially, here's the veil that sits over your company, or that shields all of the people involved from any personal liability. However, there are some instances where the court will pierce through that veil, that protection, and let the individuals be sued in their individual capacity. These situations are limited, and they're usually in the sense of wrongdoing, when fraud has been involved. If you've been operating a company for no other reason but to shield yourself from personal liability, and it has no other purpose, it has no assets, it has absolutely nothing, there's going to be instances where they can say that's a sham corporation, you weren't doing anything with it, and instead you were just trying to protect yourself, where they can go after you individually. Say you did work as a company and then you quit working, you terminated that company, and then somebody wants to sue you afterwards. They're gonna come after you individually, because just because you've terminated that company and it no longer has any assets doesn't mean that they can't follow up with some of the liability and come after you individually. So don't worry, as long as you're doing what you should be doing and operating a company as it should be operated, then you're going to have that protection. But there is always that possibility that when you're not doing things the right way or committing fraud, all that kind of stuff, you're not just going to be shielded from liability. And that's point A under there. This occurs when owners or officers or directors of a corporation used a corporate entity to commit fraud or other illegalities. So when we're dealing with illegal behavior, you're not going to be shielded from liability. They're going to be able to get to you through piercing the corporate veil. All right. When we talk about our directors and our officers, they've got two duties: the duty of care and the duty of loyalty. So first, the duty of care. Remember, I'm talking about board of directors here and the officers within that, the corporate officers, CEO, CFO, that kind of thing. The standard of care, generally, the standard duty of care generally requires a director or an officer to act in good faith, honestly, to act in what he or she considers to be the best interest of the corporation, and to conduct reasonable investigation into corporate matters before making a decision. Use common sense, be honest, research your decisions. Don't just make them on the fly, because when you think about it, the owners have elected you to use your best judgment and do your best research to make the best decisions that are the best for the company, which as a whole are the best for the owners, because they're the ones that are going to get the profits in the forms of dividends. And so there's this duty of care. You have to act honestly. Always put the corporation's best interest first, and do your investigation before you make those decisions. So number one under that is the business judgment rule. A corporate director or officer will not be liable to the corporation or to its shareholders for honest mistakes of judgment or bad business decisions made in good faith. So under the business, let me do that one more time, business judgment rule. A corporate director or officer will not be liable to the corporation or to its shareholders for honest mistakes of judgment or bad business decisions that are made in good faith. Sometimes you're going to make bad decisions. You're going to make a bad investment. You're going to make a bad hire of a CEO that, some things are going to happen even though you've used your best judgment that you can after so much investigation. So a director or an officer cannot make every decision scared that the shareholders are going to turn around and sue them for it being the wrong one. They're going to be protected as long as they can show they did all of that with the corporation's interest and the shareholders' interest first. But some decisions are just not good ones, and that's just the business world for you. All right. Then when we talk about the duty of loyalty, directors and officers' duty of loyalty. This requires directors and officers to subordinate their personal interest to the welfare of the corporation. Essentially, not to compete with it. Okay, so we're not going to learn everything there is about running a successful social media platform and you're on the board of directors for it, and then over here you're investing in a direct competitor based on that information. No, you have a loyalty to the corporation for which you're involved with. Okay, so you've got to subordinate all of your personal interests, especially your financial interests, to the welfare of the corporation so that you can make the best decisions for this corporation. And lastly, shareholders. Remember, shareholders own the corporation, but they generally are not responsible for its daily management. So if I own a share in Facebook or a few shares in Facebook, they really don't want or care about my input when it comes to how to successfully run that business. I think they've got it under control. But nevertheless, number one, shareholders meetings must occur at least annually. So when you have these companies and you have shareholders, whether you're a private corporation or a publicly held corporation, you still have shareholders, and they have to have a meeting at least annually. Basically, at this meeting, they are electing board of directors, electing officers, things that have to happen on an annual basis to meet the statutory requirements. Number two, though, the law allows stockholders to either vote in person or to appoint another person as their agent to vote their shares at a meeting. So with my little interest in Facebook, I'm not flying up to wherever they're having their annual shareholder meeting to vote on things. What you've got is point A is a proxy, P-R-O-X-Y. This is the agent's formal authorization to vote the shares. So this is shareholders allowing other people and authorizing other people to vote their shares. Okay, that's a proxy, P-R-O-X-Y. So again, I would love for you guys to spend a little bit of time on the Secretary of State's website, just looking through the various companies. Anybody you've ever done business with or you've ever worked for or anything, they're going to be on there. And it's really cool to see where they were set up, who their registered agent is. Every year you've got to file your annual reports with the Secretary of State's office so you can see their most recent directors, their most recent officers. It's pretty cool to have that information all right there. So take a look at that. Next week, I will post some videos. We've only got 2 chapters left. Chapter 3 on bailments, when we're talking about personal property, and then chapter 24 when we talk about real property, real estate. My favorite thing to talk about. And that's a pretty lengthy chapter because I could talk about it all day. So, if you've got any questions, send me an email and I'll make an announcement on Blackboard. Stay safe and stay healthy. Talk to you soon. Bye.